So we are starting biomolecules. These are our 5 characteristics of life: ONERR, organization, nutrition, excretion, reproduction, response. We have covered the organization portion, and now we're going into nutrition. And you need to know a definition for nutrition, and it's how an organism obtains and uses its food. We've also covered biomolecule, and this is a chemical that's made in a living thing, a living organism. We have some biomolecules that we've done in junior cycle, so you should be aware of carbohydrates, you should be aware of proteins, you should be aware of lipids. We, in our organization topic, did nucleic acids, so these are DNA and RNA, so there's a whole load of things should be going through your head. Name of DNA and RNA, what it stands for, the sugar in it, what's in a nucleotide, what are the base pairs, how they differ between DNA and RNA. All of those things should be going through your head right now. We have 2 new ones that we're going to come on to in this nutrition topic overall, and this is ATP. It's called adenosine triphosphate. As I say, we'll come back to it again. And this is an energy supplier in reactions. And these 2 chemicals actually are identical. And the only reason they differ in their name is because it relates to the processes that they're used in. So NAD plus and NADP plus. And these guys are electron suppliers in chemical reactions. So these ones we know from junior cycle. This one we know from our organization topic, and these 2 little guys here are new. So in terms of then food and why do we actually need it? Well, it is going to be a source of energy. It is going to supply us with chemicals for our cell reactions. It is going to help us to do growth and repair of our body when we need it. And we are going to drill down into each of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids in this little video. So I'm just going to show you this part so you can see it overall. So when we talk about carbohydrates, we have to talk about it in terms of their structural differences and their metabolic uses and their sources. So these guys here are the kind of the 3 headers that we are going to look at for each of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So before we go into that, just you need to know the source, the elements that are in there. So you will see me writing down for carbohydrates, CHO is our shorthand. So you need to be aware that the C is carbon, the H is hydrogen, and the O is oxygen. We also have a formula for carbohydrates, and this looks like this: CxH2OY. And what this formula tells us is that there is a fixed ratio of elements in carbohydrates. When we look at lipids, for example, they also are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but they are not in a fixed ratio. So it's really, really important that you see this, and this is showing you how they are distributed. Now, in terms of our structural information on our carbohydrates, we have 3 families of them, and for you you kind of need to have a little definition for each of them. So it's mono, di, and poly. So these come from Latin, and mono just means 1 sugar unit. Disaccharides would be 2 sugar units, and poly just means many sugar units. Now, in an ideal world, we want to digest monosaccharides because they are easy to get from our intestines into our blood. We have different examples that you just need to be aware of. So we have glucose, and maybe we might draw glucose as a little circle. We have fructose, which is another monosaccharide. We might decide to draw fructose as a little house, and there is galactose is another one. We might decide to draw that as a little hexagon. So they're all 1 sugar units. So things like fruits, honey, they're really good sources of monosaccharides, of glucose, fructose, and galactose. So when we go to disaccharides, then we talk about 2 sugar units. So one that's going to be really, really important when we get into digestion is a thing called maltose. And maltose is essentially 2 glucose molecules stuck together. Malt, if you know anything about brewing, that is the sugar that you find in cereals. Another one that you might come across in our course might be sucrose. So sucrose is made up of glucose and fructose stuck together. And when we eat this, you might be eating table sugar that you put in your tea. That is sucrose. And the last one that you might have heard of might be lactose. So lactose is a mixture of galactose and glucose. So again, 2 sugar units, and you might have heard of people being lactose intolerant. We find that in milk. So again, you need to know the families, so the mono, the di, the poly, and then you need to know the sources. So fruits and honey for monosaccharides, we have a variety of sources for the different disaccharides, and then finally we're going to go to the polysaccharide portions. So for our polysaccharide portions, we're going to talk about starch. Now, starch is a storage carbohydrate in plants. So storage carbohydrate in plants. Obviously, we eat starch, and starch is a whole load of glucose molecules stuck together. Every now and again, you get the kind of chain adds on slightly differently. So there's 2 different little enzymes that are going to go after these little ones. But if we do some digesting, then that one would break to give us the disaccharide maltose. This one would break to give us the disaccharide maltose, this one. And that's how enzymes then would work. So this is our storage carbohydrate in plants. We find it if we eat bread, if we eat pasta, if we eat rice, they will all have starch, which is loads and loads of glucose together. The next one then we're going to look at is cellulose. So we should know from our organization and our cell wall, this is what we call a structural carbohydrate. So we have storage carbohydrates and structural carbohydrates. This one is in the cell wall. We can't digest cellulose anymore directly. We do have a set of bacteria in our large intestines that help us out with it. But essentially these X-links we can't break. We find it really, really hard to break. So we would, this is what we eat for fibre. So green leafy veg are full of cellulose, and that's giving us fibre to prevent constipation. The last one that I'm going to look at is glycogen. This is a storage carbohydrate, but it's in animals. Unlikely you will have eaten it unless you've killed something and eaten it raw straight away, because as soon as an animal dies, it is going to use up that glycogen in respiration, trying to keep its cells alive for as long as possible. So it is unlikely that you will have seen it. It's kind of a little bit like starch in its setup, in that we can digest it very easily. So we can get amylase can come along and just go chunk, 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 and away we go. So again, we have said that you need to have sources of all of the different monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides for yourself, and you need to have an idea of what they kind of look like. So sometimes the little diagrams can help. The other side of this then is the metabolic roles of carbohydrates, and you need to have a definition for metabolism. So that is the sum of all the chemical reactions in the body. There are two types of them, so you're either anabolic or catabolic. Catabolic is, I'm just going to put in the keywords, you are breaking large molecules into small molecules, and when you do that, you release energy. In the notes, you might see the little hint. So if your cat was to eat you, so the cat for catabolic, there would be little pieces of you left, and your cat would be very, very fat from all of that energy that they're getting. So catabolic, big into small, and releases loads of energy. So then opposite world, you are making small into big, small molecules into big molecules for anabolic, and this needs energy to do it. So you will also see in the notes book this mnemonic, CRAP. So what it is telling you is an example of a catabolic reaction is respiration. So again, you should have a definition from our organization. So we're breaking down glucose to get energy. And where the energy that we're trying to make is this thing called ATP. So again, you might have loads of little balls for our respiration, and we're breaking it down to give us these little single ones. We're going to put in something like a little lightning bolt, or at least my version of it, and that's kind of signifying that we're getting energy. So that's catabolic is respiration. Anabolic then begins with P, its process, and that is photosynthesis. So you should know from junior cycle that photosynthesis is we are making glucose from carbon dioxide and water, and light and chlorophyll. And when we do that, we're taking small molecules essentially, and we're making them need energy to do it. So again, my version of a lightning bolt, I'm not an artist, and now we turn it into something big. So this is our little overview of our carbohydrates. So if you can break it down for yourself, structural, metabolic, polysaccharides, what are their sources, what are the names of the different things, and then in terms of our metabolic, we have catabolic and anabolic reactions, and we use CRAP to remember the ones that we're interested in.